Can I get your Wi-Fi?
Oh yeah, it's RC 5G. I've never given ready the password before. You ready for the password?
RC5G. You've never given anybody the password before?
No, you want to hear it?
Yeah.
69696969.
Please tell me you're recording right now.
Hello, you're listening to Long Form Conversations, a podcast about long form improv. I'm your host, David Long. I'd like to invite you to the very first episode of Long Form Conversations ever. There's never been a podcast by this name ever before. I am joined by a guest for our inaugural episode. Everybody, please welcome Sean Smith.
Woo, thank you. Thanks for having me for the inaugural first ever long form conversations podcast.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Check the spelling.
Check the spelling. Yeah. Luong podcast is legally a true fact. First of all, just so you all can get to know Sean, he is an improviser at UCB. He also performs at a couple of other local theaters in Los Angeles. He's also a newly minted writer-director.
Ooh, yeah.
Any other things you want to add to your bio?
Friend, current fiance, soon to be husband.
Whoa.
Son.
Careful.
Brother.
Yeah. I'm always careful to like not listening, because then you might leave one out. You're like, you're also a cousin.
That's true.
You're also my nephew. Someone's gonna be like, geez, this kid left me out.
Don't subtweet me on Teresa.
Well, I like to start off just by catching up, and I wanted to just see what you're up to. We are obviously friends and teammates and all things.
Obvious by our rapport.
Yes. You took a trip to back home or to see your nephew, right? Or...
Yeah, North Carolina. My brother and sister-in-law live there with my two nephews.
Incredible. First time seeing them, right?
First time seeing my new nephew. His name's Griffin. He's a month and a half old now. February 8th, he was born. So he's still like super infant stage, like can't really lift his head. So it was nice because we were my other nephew's like just about 4. So he's like,
oh wow,
he's in a great, like everything's so fun and lovey. And we were just like watching kids movies, which I unironically love kids movies.
What'd you watch?
He's really into Rango right now. So we watched Rango. He's been obsessed with Zootopia for a long time.
Nice.
So we watched some Zootopia. And then on my recommendation, we watched Turbo.
The snail movie?
Yeah, the snail that wants to win the Indy 500. Well, it's like lizards, it's like the things that kids are into are like very simple. It's like, oh yeah, this is about trucks. I'm 100% in.
Yeah, I have a toy truck.
Yeah, this is about animals. I'm 100% in.
Planes, the things I see in the air.
Done.
Yeah. Sign me up for a 3-hour sequel.
Yeah.
Another thing that happened recently this week was we both had our UCB debuts.
Woo, congrats.
Congratulations to you. I don't want this to be like a huge compliment fest, but you knocked the socks off of everybody on that stage.
Thank you, man. I feel the same about you. It was fun and exciting and a little nerve-wracking to start, but then as soon as it got going, I don't know how you felt about it, but like as soon as the show got going, it was like, oh, okay, I've done a lot of improv. Like this is gonna be fun.
I agree with you.
But right before it, I was like, not to segue into our first thing too early, but like there was a little bit of like, okay, I deserve to be up here, yeah, right?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think we're no strangers to performing. We've done it for years. We were also no strangers to that stage. We've done a couple of shows there already.
Yeah.
But I will say, walking off to that opening night crowd, it was probably the biggest audience I've ever performed for.
It was crazy, yeah.
Yeah, and also like the lights,
You say it was the biggest audience you've ever performed for?
Well, I do a lot of professional presentations, so like It was the biggest comedy audience I've ever performed for.
Biggest audience that you like really care about.
Yeah, I do get nervous in front of.
When you do professional presentations, are we talking like at a conference, like you're doing like conference talks and stuff?
It's a lot of conferences. It'll be either like in conference rooms. It'll be in like I don't know what they're called, but you know how hotels will like block off giant rooms.
Yeah,
you know?
like a
like event planning
ballroom.
Yeah, like that's honestly what it is. It's a ballroom. People have weddings there, but we give technical seminars.
What's the what do you think is the largest audience you've like pitched to, I guess, in that sense?
I will answer this question, but I just want to make it clear. I am the host, you are the guest. So this is the last question I will be fielding today. The largest audience I've ever performed for, I'm just gonna say like it was probably more than 300, but I'll cut off at 300. Okay. Just because the room gets so big and there's also some couple empty chairs and everything. Yeah. So it could have been more, it could have been less. Yeah. No, sorry. It could have been more, but it's definitely not less.
And I know you said that was the last question, but do you get nervous for those, or are you like pretty comfortable in that role?
Very comfortable in that role. The thing about, giving any type of professional presentation is you're prepared. Yeah. You know what you're saying. And it's also a situation where you are always going to know more than the audience, like by definition, I prepare. It's all new information. I'm kind of like releasing, like, here's some cool new features. Exactly. Hot drop. So there's never a situation where they'll get me in a corner because their questions will be like, how do we do this? And even if the answer is like, I don't know, it's like, but I know more than you,
motherfucker.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to comedy, it's a little bit different because especially the audiences that we typically perform for, they're usually also very like hip to comedy and they know their stuff. So and plus we're making it up. So there really is no like, I know more than you. They're like, do you? No, I kind of have to fake it though.
Yeah. Or maybe I do. Maybe I'm just thinking about this at like a slightly deeper level a lot of particularly more indie shows, it's like you're performing for other performers. So there's kind of a difference there, but ideally you're thinking about it at least harder and on a deeper level than an audience member who's like checked out. Because that's, I've been the audience member where I'm in the audience being like, I feel like I'm giving this more thought than they are.
That's true. No fun. And that's kind of something that I would say too, like from someone who does so many like presentations and everything, they just want to make sure that like you're holding up your end of the deal. Yeah. Their end of the deal is I'm going to be quiet and listen. Your end of the deal is that you have to kind of know what you're talking about, and even if you don't, you kind of have to fake it. And I think that's literally what all of improv is like, hey, we don't know where we are. We don't know what the unusual thing is. And we don't know what the next two moves are going to be. Yeah. But we have to give off the feeling that we do.
Yeah. I need, like, your job is to like make the audience trust that they're in good hands.
Yes.
I feel like that's like the most important.
Yeah. Oh man, this is already kind of a deep topic. We're not even through the introduction yet, but just to kind of agree with you, there's so much that goes into it. There's charisma, right? There is like that like confidence. There's like that shark glance where their eyes go black, but like, how sharks' eyes are black, they're like zeroed in. There's like that where you're like, I'm not really sure what's going on, but like they know what's going on. Uh-huh. So like X factors, lots of different things.
Yeah. But I think there's also a lot, and this is something that I'm going to sound very hippy dippy when I talk about this, but I think there is a lot to be said about the energy you put off. And I don't mean like I'm looking at somebody and I just see their aura, but like if you see an animal in the wild and you are nervous about that animal, like it's going to be more aggressive to you because they can pick up that you're nervous. Like you put out like pheromones and you have like certain body positions that you put off. And I think it's the same way with human interaction and like particularly watching people. Like if you are somebody that is on stage and can be loose, which is why I was asking about like your professional stuff. I feel like you would be great at that. And I would like, I work in a professional environment and I go to those events and most of the time they suck because people are like really like stilted, and seeing somebody that's just like comfortable in their skin it does so much heavy lifting. like right out the gate before a single move has been made. Just like seeing how somebody stands, it like can immediately prime you to be like, okay, I think I'm gonna like this.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And just to make a small tangent, did you know that deer, their sense of smell is so good they can tell if you're a omnivore or a herbivore by your
Whoa,
breath?
like smelling on my breath.
They can smell like the turkey sandwich you had yesterday.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Like, so, I mean, I don't know what that has to do with
I'm
anything.
smelling performers when they step up on stage.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's just so much that we don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure they don't think that they're perceiving that.
Yeah,
But I think, and the humans we're so much more visual.
yeah,
You can probably perceive, again, shark eyes.
yeah.
But you can
There's
perceive
things
if
that
they're
you
nervous.
pick up that you can't place, but
Mhm.
like it's there. It's affecting you, I think.
Yeah, and like, they're all gonna look different. Like, you'll see the person that may be like the sweatiest, but it's just because the lights are hot. They're
Yeah,
still so like on fire and like confident. So
yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
oh, it's not just like simple tells, it's more to it.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
All right. So what else has been going on this week? Anything else?
Yeah, so we talking about improv.
Yeah, we gotta talk about improv. All right, great. Well, that was kind of just us catching up, but as you mentioned, yeah, we got a lot of rapport, and we had some catching up to do. So I'm glad we got a chance to do that. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to this first segment that I'm going to do, a recurring segment. It's called Improvster Syndrome.
You got theme music?
I'm gonna, yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Improvster Syndrome.
So I wanted to use this as opportunity to get to listen to your backstory, but also just to let anybody listening, one of my millions of listeners out there, may be interested one day in, becoming an improviser. And I think being able to understand like what a long journey it's been, and also
Yeah.
that, even though we may be up there and we do have those shark eyes and we are just so confident, there's still a small feeling sometimes of like, oh gosh, I don't know if I should be up here. So why don't you go ahead and walk us through your improv origin story?
Yeah. Well, I just started it like a week ago, so just a natural talent, I guess.
Yeah, I don't understand. If you're doing improv for more than a week and you haven't gotten a house team yet, just give up.
I am 28. I started doing improv in freshman year of high school. I have one of my really good friends, my best friend growing up, still one of my very great friends. He's a groomsman at my wedding. His uncle is the legendary improviser Scott Adsit, of 30 Rock and
Second City.
Baymax fame. Yeah, he
Mhm.
came up through Second City. He was on the main stage there. So that was his uncle. And so just because of that, like I grew up in Georgia, so improv was like not really a thing other than Who's Line. But because of my friend who knew that it existed and there was this whole art form, I kind of learned about it through him. So there was a improv club at my high school that met once a week on Fridays.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. I had a really cool theater teacher in high school. Yeah, so that was literally just doing short form games.
And did he teach you those, or?
No, it was kind of like they were just being passed down. It felt like from year to year. A lot of them were games that you would see on Who's Line, and then there was a couple of other ones that like I never saw on there, but like so at that point it was truly just like me being a kid seeing older kids be really witty and be like, wow, like they're so cool and smart, like I want to be witty like that. And then I would watch Who's Line and stuff, and then after that freshman year I got really into it, and then that summer my friend's mom was like, oh, if he really likes it, you should go to Second City. That's where Scott went, and that's like where people that are really serious about it go. And they had these summer camps for like 2 weeks. So big shout out to my parents.
Yeah, that's a huge like offer.
Yeah, it was super cool. And my friend, the Edwards, I should say, to give them a shout out. My friend's grandma lived in the suburbs of Chicago. So we got to go stay with his grandma for 2 weeks. So we didn't have to like pay for rent or anything. and we had a nice safe place to stay. And then we would take the train in from Northbrook into Chicago every day for Monday through Friday for those 2 weeks. And the camp was like an 18 and under camp, and you would do like 3 hours of sketch class in the morning, have lunch, and then do 3 hours of improv in the afternoon.
Wow.
And then at the end you would put on a review of sketches.
So that's like the teen intensive, but that's also like their conservatory program condensed.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. And like the way they do improv is like they do improv to generate sketch ideas. So you were kind of learning the very fundamentals of improv, like, yes and, being characters, acting, and you would just kind of do that. And then if you had a fun scene, or like there was an idea in a scene there, you would be like, oh great, like, well, I'll just take that and then I'll write a sketch around it. And then at that point it's just sketch writing and like refining it. But they like use improv as a tool as opposed to like the end product. So that was what I was doing for a while, and I did that summer camp every single summer.
So all 4 years?
All 4 years. And then I went, I think, let's see if I'm getting this right. Yeah, so then I went to college. At that point, I had familiarity with long form improv, and like I'd been to see shows at IO when I was there, and I got to see TJ and Dave, which was awesome. That's TJ Jagodowski and Dave Pasquesi. They did like a 2-prov thing where they would do hour-long, just the two of them.
Sonic commercials.
Yeah, TJ is Sonic commercials. Dave is he's been in a bunch of stuff, but I feel like what most people know him from is he's in Veep. He was Julia's ex-husband. But they were amazing. Like that was like seeing the holy grail of improv, because they've both been doing it for 30 years. They've been a 2-prov team. They consistently performed together for a decade. So they were just like so zoned in, and they would just spin a yarn for a full hour, and it was incredibly engaging, well acted. Like it was awesome. So that truly made me fall in love with not just being witty, but like, oh, this could be a whole unbelievable, unforgettable experience. And then in college, I joined the improv group there, and kind of the imposter syndrome thing. As a freshman in high school, I felt like an imposter. Like I was just like brave enough to get up and fail, basically. But I thought that I was like the weakest person in the room to start. There was all these other people that were like way smarter and funnier than me. And then when I got to college, I got on an improv group there, and I had a little bit of imposter syndrome because there was some older seniors who had been doing it a lot, and they were like super smart and talented and stuff, and I was a freshman. But I felt a little bit better because I had done all that, like those summer intensives that most other people didn't, so I did that, and that was kind of a weird little pocket. The couple of years in front of me, they built up this great cadence and following. And when I joined that team as a freshman, we were performing maybe like once every other week or once a month or so, and it would be to like 20 people or something. We would just do like free shows in classrooms, like wherever we could get a spot. And then my sophomore year, the two people who were like the elected presidents of that club, we didn't have coaches. We just like, it was very democratic, and you would like vote. It was very weird, honestly, looking back on it, that system, but it worked. And they started doing weekly shows, and it was like a free show Friday night at like 7 and for an hour. And
these shows are short form or long form?
It was a mix. So we would do like a 15-minute montage to start, and then we would do short form games for probably like 20 or 30 minutes. And then we would end on like a 20-minute more like structured long form. So we did all sorts of different structures there, which was very fun. Like we would like make some up. Like we did like a murder mystery one that we would do like theme nights for.
How big are these groups right now? And for that,
how many people are in the group?
Yeah. Or like any given night, any given show.
There were, I think, the biggest the group got, I think, was like 16 people.
Okay.
But usually not everybody was able to make it. And then as the following got bigger and like the people in the group got more serious, it started like more and more people were making it to shows consistently. So eventually we started doing 2 shows on Fridays. And we would like, if too many people were going to be there, we would like break up the cast a little bit.
Yeah.
But because we were doing 2 long forms and a lot of short form, it was pretty easy to mix and match, and everybody was going to, and you would decide ahead of time who was going to be in what short forms and stuff. So it was very easy to like make sure everybody got a lot of stage time.
Well, it's also just a lot of reps, or like a lot of show reps, first of all, but to also be able to go on for an hour, there's that like mental fatigue. So I understand that in short form, I understand that there's breaks in between, but you're also still hopefully present even when you're not on the stage.
It was awesome. It was great for getting reps and kind of grinding, for lack of a better term. And there was also this like, there's like the college improv tournament, and which is like,
that's how big the improv scene was at your school, that there was enough people to.
So that was a national thing.
Oh,
like
okay.
The CIT was like a national thing, and you would like go to regionals, the Southeast Regional, and like perform a 30-minute set, and then like some group of improvisers would say like, oh, this was the best, and then you go to the finals in Chicago. It was weird. It was kind of a gambit,
But you did so you competed.
We competed.
You competed at collegiate level improv?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, which like, I mean, I don't know. I'll say for a college team, I think we were really good. For a professional age, we were solid. We were like, if you had seen my team at the clubhouse, you would have been like, yeah, it's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Which is cool considering we were all young and most people had never done any classes or anything. It was just kind of self-taught at that point, or like taught amongst the people.
Now, in the meantime, I don't want to like also like skip over this part, but these are all extracurricular things. So you had, that was in high school, that was summer camp. So you had a whole, 4 years of high school, and this is college. You were also taking classes and everything too. What was your major?
I was an advertising major and a theater minor. I wanted to go to college for film, and I thought about going to college for theater, but it was like too expensive, basically. Like I wanted to go to Chicago and go to DePaul University, go to their Actors Conservatory, and be taking Second City classes while I was there. Like that was the plan. But it was either go out of state and get a theater degree and have a lot of student debt, or not have student debt and go in state. So that's what ended up happening, was I went there to UGA. And
shout out to UGA.
Shout out to UGA, go Dogs. Yeah, so we got this weird following, and all of a sudden we were having like 300 person shows, like people in the audience twice a night for junior and senior year.
Wow.
It was wild, and I don't think that's ever going to happen to me again in my life, which is a shame because I'm a much better improviser now than I was then. But it was really cool, and it was a good opportunity. It was a very safe environment, or maybe not. I don't know. I guess it was a big stage, so it was a lot of people. So there was a lot of nerves, I think, for a lot of people. But I definitely, I threw myself fully into comedy in college. Like my extracurricular was my main focus because I was doing that. I was also like my junior and senior year, I was leading that group. I was also leading.
You were elected president.
I was elected president.
The system works. Trust it.
I was also leading the sketch group there, and then I was doing stand up around town a little bit and hosting a stand up show at my house once a month with my buddies.
Whoa.
So I was like very much so trying to make myself like the comedy guy. Like,
it sounds like you succeeded too. I mean, with that type of like, that's a pretty impressive, should we say, resume, or like,
it was me
presence.
Me and my friends. Like there was a crew of people that were all kind of doing all 3 things and like working really hard. And there was some people that were leaning more into like I have some friends that are still like, they're doing very well as stand-ups now. And they were, driving into Atlanta, which is an hour and a half drive, to do like 3 sets, like find 3 different mics on a weekday, come back, do improv. Like, so there was kind of this little bubble of these people that all really cared about comedy and were pursuing it really hard in those 3 avenues.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And then I came out to LA because I had an internship with Funny or Die between junior and senior year. And I had a boss. I was going to move to Chicago, but I had my boss then was like, hey, you know, we like you. And if you decide to move out to LA, we'll try to help you find a job to get started. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do that then, because Funny or Die school. And that's the end goal anyway, is working in comedy in some capacity. So I came
Had
out.
it not been for that offer, you think you would have moved out anyways, or was that always the plan? Were you going to go to Chicago or New York?
I was probably going to move to Chicago.
Okay.
I was thinking about LA or Chicago. I was never fully thinking about New York.
You came out to LA for the internship, but had you like visited before? Had you like seen UCB shows or anything?
No, never. I had never been out here. So I just came out for that internship, and I spent a summer out here. And while I was out here for the summer,
great.
I also, between college, freshman and sophomore year, I went to Chicago for a week and started taking their adult courses.
Their adult summer intensive?
Basically, like they would do cram a course into a week. And so I basically recreated what I was doing with like kids camp, but I would go out for that year. I went out for 1 week.
Stayed at the Edwards grandma's suburbs house?
At that point it wasn't. At that point it wasn't, because he wasn't going.
Yeah.
So at that point I was staying in a hostel by myself.
There you go.
But I went, I did their 101 for improv and sketch. And then the next year I actually got a scholarship from my theater college. And that was for like $5,000 or $10,000 or something. And I used that all to pay for 201 through 401 at Second City for their writing and improv. So then when I came out for that internship, I took UCB 101. And I was just doing that like throughout the summer while I was also doing the internship and like classes and stuff. And then when I moved out here, I charged through 201 and through 401. And that's when I really had the biggest imposter syndrome feeling, because
before we jump into that, can I just ask, so this is, like you mentioned, after college. So you've already done all those summer intensive. Was there a reason why you wanted to do UCB over Second City Hollywood or IO?
I heard it was better.
Okay.
When I moved out here, it was pretty shortly after that. So first of all, I had done Second City. So when I came out here for the summer internship,
You didn't want to take it.
I didn't want to do more Second City. I wanted to learn from a different school, which, if you are trying to pursue improv and you're listening to this, like, I think anybody that says just go to one school, I think is wrong. I think every school has things that they can teach you and have like different approaches that all can like be a part of your tool belt. There's schools that I haven't taken classes at, and I would still like to. Like, I've never done anything at Groundlings, but I would like to do stuff there. It's just a matter of how much time I have at this point. But yeah, that's why I took UCB, and it was hard. The 101 wasn't that hard, but just because a lot of 101 was like some of the basics that I had learned before. But I could tell that what their style of teaching, and like teaching to game, which was not the way that I was taught at Second City and just generally in Chicago, like trying to play that way was very challenging. And that was something I like brought back to my group, and I was like, hey, we're going to try to learn this together, you know? And it was still it can still be tough for me to operate in that mindset, even though I'm like on one of their house teams now. That, like, it was a big imposter syndrome feeling when I moved out here, because I was like, I felt like I was the comedy guy. And then I moved out to a city where all of the comedy guys have moved to, and comedy girls. I'm not trying to be gender specific, but like the identity that I had built up for myself I then moved to a city filled with people that had that same identity for themselves, and I was like, oh my god, do I even compare to these people? Or like
Like a big fish, small pond.
yeah, exactly. Going from that to
Ocean.
small fish, yeah, ocean.
You're still
you
a big
know?
fish, but it's a
I've-
bigger pond.
Are you saying that because I'm tall?
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Sean is 6'6".
6'5".
Sorry.
Don't give me that extra. I don't need any more extra inches.
Hey, a pair of shoes. You never know. I did want to, while you take a sip of water, ask you about. Yeah, get more water. You know what's so funny, by the way? You've been talking this whole time, and I've been drinking. Sorry if that's like making you more thirsty. So to bring it back, you got here after your internship. You mentioned went through 201 to 401 pretty quickly.
Yeah.
What does your improv life look like between then and now?
So I went through that. I obviously auditioned to try to get on house teams and stuff. Failed. Never got a call back or anything. And I put together an indie team out of my 301 and 401 teams. So I had a couple of indie teams, and we would just perform at Clubhouse and stuff, but not super consistently because nobody I was playing with was super plugged in at that point.
Yeah.
So we were self-submitting and trying to find Clubhouse spots when we could.
And that's kind of, I would say, the LA grind. Once you complete 401, that's kind of just the beginning.
Yeah.
So much of it from here on out is just free falling, catching yourself, finding groups, submitting your groups, teams fall apart.
Yeah, exactly. Rhiannon fell apart. The other group was middle school theater troupe, and we were doing stuff for a little bit. And then I auditioned for a house team, just kind of on a lark, for the Improv Space, which was a theater over in Westwood, and pretty small theater. Got on a team there, and that was very attractive because you got a 30-minute set every Friday night, and I was in the 8 o'clock hour, so it felt like a prime slot. I mean, it's what we do with We now.
Yeah. Really quick, I didn't know you did the Improv Space. Did you know Mackenzie and Jacob?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I took I think it was either 301 or 401 with them.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I loved it over there. It was a cool community, and there was a lot of people there that either wanted to be in UCB, or there was a lot of people that didn't care about UCB, and it was like, I'm just here to do improv because I think improv's fun. I'm not trying to ladder climb in the LA scene. And that was really refreshing to be around after being doing indie stuff and doing UCB. I was feeling kind of burnt out and feeling like, oh, I'm doing improv because I'm trying to get successful at it. And it was it wasn't as fun as I was having before moving to LA.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a bummer. I was like, well, I moved out here to LA to do this. So if I'm not having fun doing it, then why did I uproot my life and all that kind of stuff? And so the Improv Space was great for that because I was on a team with some really funny people, including this guy who's a vet. His name's James Gangle, and he was teaching at Second City and came from Second City, Toronto, and he was awesome. And we had a great coach, Natasha Blakely, who was from Chicago and very much so schooled in the annoyance way of doing improv, which as I just said, I wanted to take classes there. So that was kind of me getting my annoyance stuff from her. And we were very focused on a different type of improv. It wasn't game. It was very organic, but big focus on directing, having a lot of scenic variety. And we would do musical numbers and crazy group games and really committed dramatic performances, and trying to weave as many different types of scenes and types of improv into a single 30-minute set, and doing really wild edits and transitions and scenic transitions. And so that was just very freeing and cool to kind of do, even though we were performing for hardly anybody, but we were committed really hard to trying to make as good of a show as we possibly could. And that was awesome and really ignited me. And then that show went under, right before the pandemic. And during that time, I wasn't really doing too much else because I was feeling pretty content. I was also working really hard in a kitchen, so I just didn't have as much. Like I would do indie shows every once in a while, but that was my main thing
Yeah.
at the time.
That is like a tough thing about improv. You kind of mentioned, like questioning yourself or having that, like, why am I doing this? A lot of improv, especially out here in Los Angeles, is kind of work. If you want to perform, it's work. Or, I've been in a lot of groups where it's like 90% practice, 10% performing.
Yeah.
And it really is a change from what what most people may enjoy, or why they fell in love with improv in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love I sometimes prefer a rehearsal to a show. Like I think you can be super loose in rehearsals in a way that you can't at a show. But I think the mindset of trying to get on a house team and like, oh, we got to like change our rehearsals now to be focusing on audition prep, and that kind of stuff was very exhausting for me, because I was like, it is something I want, but what I really want out of improv is to like have fun and try to put on a good show. And those two things kind of felt at odds to me sometimes. So anyway, I was doing improv space, and then during the pandemic, I didn't do any improv because I just couldn't vibe with Zoom improv. It just didn't feel the same to me. And I was kind of like, oh, maybe I don't need improv. And like, I was like writing and trying to convince myself that like, oh, maybe it doesn't matter that
Just
much.
lying to yourself.
To 100%. To be sane, as we all were trying to do during that time. But then as soon as I heard that there was like in-person classes available that I could go to at I signed up for one like as soon as I could. And it was just like so invigorating. And that was particularly invigorating again in the same way that improv space was, because it was like UCB was closed. Like there was no version of we're trying to hustle right now to get on a house team. It was like, this is a game in town and we're all here because we love doing it and we want to be good at improv and we want to put on funny shows for each other. And like, to me, that's the spirit. And that felt great. I'm still on 2 teams from there, perform there all the time. Yeah, so that's my journey. I still feel a little impostery sometimes, all the time. I often like I'm surrounded by people that I think are super funny and talented, and I'd be lying if even though I just told you that I've been doing this for 12 years, I still think sometimes like, oh, do I, do these people think that I'm funny? Do they think that I'm good at this, or are they just blowing smoke up my butt and being nice when they say like, oh, you were really good,
Yeah. And I'm sure it's a feeling that kind of never goes away, or it's a feeling that's always kind of there. But yeah, for those of you that were, trying to keep count back home, I was keeping count. So that's 12 years, and that's like over 6 different institutions with which you kind of work with. And I think that also has to do with it. It's like a lot of whiplash. It's always, whenever you start at a new theater or a new community, it always does feel like you're kind of at the bottom again.
Yeah, and you just want to be accepted, and and the thing is it's like there's tons of different types of performers. So like there are people that I really admire and think like they're amazing, and they're doing stuff that I don't think that I can do because that's the way that their brain works and the type of improv that they do. And then down the line, if you're lucky, you find out that they think the same about you. It's like, oh, you perform in a way that I can, and like I really respect and admire it, and I wish that I could do that. And like that's like the fun alchemy of a good team is a team that has people with different strengths that kind of complement each other. But yeah, like I guess to be like there's the derivative pirates, robots, ninjas and stuff. Like I love people that are good pirates. It's like I think they're awesome, and I'm not good at that. I try to be, and I aspire to get better at that skill. But yeah, there's like people that make crazy moves that I would never think of, and it's awesome.
Yeah, you need that.
Yeah,
it takes a village, and if you're all bricklayers, we all got a huge wall, but who's gonna make the food? All right. I think that's going to be a good segue into our next segment. This is something that you kind of already touched upon. So I think it's good. You already laid out a lot of groundwork, but
The topic of the week.
is going to be premise versus organic. And this is something that I really wanted to dive into with you because in performing with you, in working with you, I primarily know you as an organic player. That's a majority of what we've done together. And obviously, like you mentioned, that's a lot of your background. So that's there. But then when we started, performing Heralds together and preparing for the audition together, I started to see this other side of you, which is the premise side. And just in this last couple of months, you really got me thinking how different those two can be. So that's kind of the topic I wanted to explore with you. My thing, and let me know how this sits with you. I do kind of feel that those are both at the same day. At the end of the day, you're doing the same motion. You're still doing improv, but they're just so different approaches to it. I like to think of it like a concentric muscle and an eccentric muscle.
Ooh, wow,
that's
hit
like
me with some SAT words, dog.
Sorry, yeah. I was gonna give an example. Like when you're curling your bicep, like I want to do a lot.
Yeah, dude.
There is a concentric motion.
Dude, careful, you're gonna rip your sweater, dog.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, let me go slower. You have a concentric motion that's this muscle tightening, right? But then when you release it, you don't just go dead, turkey and drop your weights. You have to let go slowly. So that's your concentric motion, or eccentric rather.
So that's why
moving.
you want to do pull downs and shoulder presses.
Yeah, well, that's complementary muscles.
Okay.
I don't know. That analogy works as well. But the other day, they're both doing the same thing, but yeah, they're both different sides of it. That's kind of like what I'm kind of taking away from it right now. And I don't know. I want to hear what you think about that analogy or that like visual.
Yeah.
What do you think about this visual?
Let me see them guns, baby. I think I have been trying to approach it from the opposite point of view. I think did you come up doing more premise stuff?
I think kind of similar to you. I came out doing short form.
Okay.
And
short form is premise, I feel like, but it's premise that you
True.
don't have to decide on. It's like pre-decided premise.
I think that's another really good way of thinking about it. But we also, when I started venturing into long form, it was not at UCB, and we would do things what they would just call them straight scenes, which is just like you just get a word and go, which is what I now understand to be organic. But because there was no game, there was no like structure to it. It was very much just like slowly building, slowly discovering. And if you can find something, it was great. But the thing that I found personally frustrating about that is once you do land on something that you kind of recognize as a game, or you recognize as like a funny conceit, or even if it's like a mapping scene, it was very hard for me to convey that to my scene partner to be like, hey, like we're roommates, but I'm treating like that classic, we're roommates, but we're like, a couple, right? Yeah. So you'll end up making like moves that are like, roomie, when are you gonna come back? I thought we were gonna have movie night tonight. And then they'll respond with like, yeah, let's make out. And you're like, okay.
You just had a bad scene partner.
No.
You just had a scene partner that wanted to mack on you, dog.
Yeah.
Because you had them guns out.
A lot. I was flexing all those improv muscles. So I guess that was kind of like, for me coming up, I feel that premise is such a new foreign thing. The good and the bad thing is UCB, in the book, in the manual, they say they don't value one over the other. They say that they find both equally rewarding. However, you see their classes, you see their shows, you see everything.
They're teaching premise, yeah.
So it's almost as if they are kind of saying like, yeah, we come from organic background, we like organic, but we don't do organic. We're not gonna touch it.
Yeah, and I think that was the vibe that I got through the classes, which is to me what felt so like that's why I think they felt so different. Was I felt like they were presented as like, this is a different thing. And now I think the better I've gotten at premise, the more I've realized that they're pretty similar. Yeah. And our coach Dana said something that really helped me a lot, which was like a premise drop, or like so premise drop being like, you do an opening to generate ideas, and then when you are initiating your scene, you are in usually the second or third line, like dropping an idea pulled from the opening as to like what you think was funny from the opening and will be like the thrust of like the start of this scene. And I think I had been thinking about it when I was going through classes and stuff, and why I was never getting callbacks, I think, was because I was so in my head, because I was thinking like, okay, premise, I need to pull something from the opening, and I basically need to have an idea of a sketch. Like I need to have a sketch level idea off of that opening, and I need to drop that and communicate what that sketch would be to my partner. And that was so difficult and like impossible, you know, like I would do it every once in a while and it was cool, but like my hit rate was so low. And Dana and a couple of other coaches recently have kind of communicated the point that like the premise drop is the first move. And our other coach, Mike, talks about like it's the symptom, it's not the disease. It could be the disease, but it's like your first move is indicating something about this character or something about this world, but it's not telling you everything. So there's still discovery, there's still organic to be had. The premise is basically like I'm going to supercharge into like I'm going to try to cut out the first minute of a scene by just getting to a fun premise drop. But from that point on, it's still discovery and still organic, because you can't fully know how your partner's going to react to it. And that shift in my thinking has really helped a lot, to be like, okay, all I have to do is pull something from the intro that I think was funny, present it in a way that works scenically. And from that point on, I'm still doing organic improv. Now it's different when you're talking about like second beats and stuff.
Yeah.
But like the first beats was always what gave me more of the hang up. Because that was like, how do I make a first scene that has a game? And then I realized I was like, I could do game.
Yeah.
I just can't write it all in my head before we've even started, you know?
Yeah. I think that is interesting to hear. I didn't, I personally didn't see it that way, because I do see that, for me, yes, like I think that now that I hear you say it, what it really comes down to is maybe listening. Not the initiation part, you know, is kind of neither here nor there. You kind of just come in with something, you know, but it's kind of having that ear. And I think that when you're doing premise, it seems like you were kind of listening for that thing, and whatever it is. Sometimes you kind of just like, okay, now that that's been said, or now that that's what it is, I'm gonna repeat it back. I'm gonna like what, and I'm gonna label it.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of like done listening. Versus in organic, I do feel that you are kind of listening, you're kind of more present.
Yeah.
You're not like on defense. You're just kind of more present. You're like, something's happening, and they may have something, you know, unusual happen, or something drop, and you're gonna question it, and then you're kind of still listening, because with organic, you're kind of just like, do you know, like, you know, since there's no opening to both relate to,
Yeah.
the listening kind of never stops. So you're kind of like, okay, wait a second, is
What
this
are,
it?
What are we doing now?
Is that
What
it?
are we doing now?
What if I brought you an orange?
Yeah.
What if I brought you a carrot? Right. So you're always in that state of play where you're kind of like testing and throwing stimuli into the machine to see what comes off.
Yeah.
Versus premise, I think sometimes you're like, no, we know what the machine does, or we have to know what the machine does. It's a minute in now. We got to just find more things to throw in.
And I think I don't know, I think I'm young on my Harold journey, because I haven't done a ton of them. So I'm excited to learn more about it. But like my sense of it right now is the first scene, like every once in a while you lock in immediately, but I think the first scene is like explore, like have a premise drop, explore on the game, define the game in the first scene, and maybe once it's been defined, hit it one more time to like really lock it in. And then the second beat is all about like, okay, now we know what the machine does. And the machine should do this as many times and in as many scenarios as we can cram into the second beat.
So everybody put your stimuli, your tags, your walk-ons into the game machine.
Yeah, make sure it's going through the game machine.
Yeah.
But the first scene, I think, should still be very like we are in discovery mode.
Yeah, you're still like reading the manual and poking the buttons.
Yeah, still like, well, what is this?
Yeah.
What about this?
And would you say then in organic you kind of had to condense that, or you had to do that more,
in organic?
In organic?
I think what I like about organic is
And I guess we should specify definitely more so in like game-based organic, which I think makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Because in a true organic where you're not playing game, I'm totally with you. From there, it's all just free creation, and it can be a narrative. It can be like what a group game looks like. Like, in my opinion, true organic, everything's gonna look like a group game.
Group game. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think just in general, like 90% of LA improv is filtered through the lens of game.
Yeah.
Which was not my experience in Chicago. So like, there's just a lot of improv that I love, but just I truly think that if you, and I have seen this happen where like scenes that I think do really well, or like teams that I think are really solid, the audience doesn't react to as well out here, because I don't think that they are either conditioned to, or it's just like not what they want to see out of their improv. Because I think game is so dominant here that like even organic improv is expected to be like, oh, you're finding a game together, like that lingo, which like game exists in Chicago, but like I think the focus of the game would be more like behavioral or interpersonal game. Like, I guess that's not that different. It's a lot of, I guess here's an example. A lot of heralds in the second beat in Chicago are time dashes. You're seeing the same character, and you're not exactly going to see the same jokes and like same quote unquote game, but you're going to see the repercussions of the first scene in those same characters.
Well, like consequential games.
And it is much more about like their character dynamic and exploring a character dynamic. And I love that. I think that's really cool. It's not done as much. Like, there's some specialty shows at UCB that do that kind of stuff, but like they're the exception, So I think that's the like in improv, I think, or in organic, I think there's a lot of exploring and just like constant exploration that I like. And I think in that same vein, if we're talking more gamey, like something I like about organic is feeling more comfortable to follow the shiny thing. And it's a different discussion about whether you always should follow the shiny thing, but like I love being able to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those are fun. Fun scenes where like something weird and unexpected happens, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're doing this now.
Yeah. And it's really hard to separate premise from herald since they're so closely tied. But I would agree, like when it's a herald, of course, like we can't follow the shiny thing. It's gonna,
maybe you can in the group game.
Maybe you can in the group game, but otherwise you're really gonna throw your scene partner for a loop if you follow the shiny object.
Yeah, and then you're gonna like you're gonna tank the second half of the set when you get to the second beat.
There's a whole second beat that relies on what's going on here.
Yeah.
So it's almost, I would say, like a ratio, I guess. If we're just talking, let's just call it a strict montage. If you're pulling premise and you're doing a montage, you probably are spending less time exploring. In organic, you would be able to explore because that's kind of like what a lot of it is.
Yeah.
The premise, it's kind of like, hey, we got it now, and now we found the game, and we've done exploring. Let's just beat it out, and then let's chase the next shiny object after that.
I love how in the weeds we are about.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's kind of one of the main things I wanted to bring up. That's why I wanted to do the topic of the week, because there are some things that I feel like don't really get talked about or get explored. But that's something that I think people are curious about, or if they're not curious about, they maybe should be.
You should be, dog.
You kind of
ain't thinking about it.
If you think, if you read the UCB manual and you think premise and organic are the same because they said it, think about it for a little bit. Just think about it. How can that be? So I think that they
have different names.
Yeah. Otherwise, we would just call it improv, right? But yeah, one I think is a different muscle, and they're both important muscles.
Yeah.
You just, I think, get utilized at different times. I think organic, a lot more listening, a lot more exploring, a lot more like figuring it out and talking back and forth. Whereas premise, and then almost also to your point, it's just like I gotta be a blank slate right now because you need to get your whole premise out, and then I'm going to
Then I'll make moves.
then I'll make moves
Yeah.
once we're like on the same page.
Yeah, I'm curious because you said like we mostly do organic together, and then you like saw a different side of me.
Yeah.
Like, I guess one, I'm curious to know what your read of that was, and then two, like my experience of that with you was like I feel like you're very writerly, which I know you hear, because I hear Dana say it to you and stuff. But like the way that you play in organic, I feel like so neatly translates to premise style improv, which I'm very jealous of.
Oh, well,
because that was like not at all my experience, and like I felt like I had to learn a whole nother play style to succeed in LA than the way that I normally played.
Well, one of the things that I've talked to a couple of improvisers about in the past, I think I was really lucky in that my first LA, improv class was UCB, and I adopted that style, I think, pretty like quickly. So for me, premise for the longest time was like, oh, this is the way to do it. This is what I'm really comfortable doing. And when it comes to premise, I think also being so writerly, I was like, I'm not going to be able to like come up with big swings or heightened moves, but what I can do is keep the truth or keep the reality. So I was always voice of reasoning. So if you would have met me pre-pandemic, you would have seen me on almost every scene voice of reasoning.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that's where I'm like really comfortable. And it wasn't until doing it on Zoom, taking some more classes, doing a lot of more organic stuff, and again that LA grind, that's when I was just like, okay, it seems like I love premise, but there's nowhere to do premise but on the stage. So all of improv is like just organic out here, right? All montages, all the clubhouse sets, all the indie sets are like 15 minutes. So that's when I started dipping my toe into that. And that's when I did start to loosen up a bit more. And that's when I did feel comfortable taking big swings. I think if it had been in the structure of a premise or in the structure of a Harold, being the initiator, being the unusual person, I would probably be like, can I be a vampire now? I don't know if I want to.
Yeah, I do love voice of reasoning.
Yeah,
I consider that to be my strength, and I'm like actively trying to be better at being the person that takes the wild swing and can sustain that energy.
Yeah. Well, I think you pulled it off so far. You're only continue to get better. But kind of speaking to that, I do think, and this was almost the other topic that I want to talk about, but I'll have to save it for another episode. But like when you're the voice of reason, like a lot of people think that the voice of reason, some people want to be unusual. Some people want to do peas in a pod. I think a lot of people at times people think the voice of reason is just like your autopilot. You're just questioning things. You're just labeling it. But I'm like, no, like you have more. I think it's more important.
Yeah.
Voice of reason is so much more important than the unusual person. It's easy to be unusual, right?
Yeah.
Banana fart.
Dude.
That was easy.
Easy.
Right? Now, being able to turn banana fart and work it into whatever the heck is going on, that's the writer part of me that I really like, oh, how do I turn that?
Yeah. How do I ground this?
How do I ground it? How do I justify it? How do I put it in there?
Yeah. And I think the other part of, and like you said, I know this is another topic, so we don't have to keep going down this rabbit hole, but I think the other part of straight manning that I love that I don't think gets talked about enough is like, you are a comedic partner. Like you are not, just because you're not the person that is playing the wild character, you are basically serving up opportunities to that person by creating a grounded environment. And then also the way in which you play, you can basically like create more stimuli, ideally seamlessly, and like makes them look really good by you sneakily providing them opportunities to play their game in a different way. And that's what I really get excited about, is like when I can be seemingly a normal person and like play that to the point that the audience thinks that I'm like the stand-in for them, but I'm also on the back end creating these scenarios for this other person to be crazy. So I'm also crazy in that sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is like being the Scottie Pippen to Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
You know, setting up all these different shots, and they don't realize how important that is until Scotty's not there anymore. Right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we need that guy to set up the shots.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, that's been the topic of the week. I'm glad we got a chance to kind of discuss premise versus organic. And
That's
again,
been the topic of the week.
that's been the topic of the week. All right. One last thing I want to do, a quick segment that I want to again recur. I want to talk about our hot improv take. Now, our hot, that's all the same voice. It's all just me one octave lower. Get ready for our hot improv takes. But our hot improv takes is an opportunity for us to kind of just rant or just go off on something that we feel strongly about in improv. And it can be temporary. It could be like, hey, that was just happening this week. So maybe in a week from now, we'll feel different from it. But if there's something that you feel is happening too much, not enough, or the right amount, and like you hope it stays this way forever, what would that be? And I can go first if you want me to kind of.
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. And when we begin it, you do have to say hot improv take.
Okay.
Preface it, okay? All right. Hot improv take. I like peas in a pod scenes. We should be doing more peas in a pod scene. Thing is, I don't see enough of it. That's because some people are like, I gotta voice reason it. But my hot take is that people, when they do peas in a pod, I don't think that's you realize that there's a lot of math going on. There's a lot of like nonverbal communication. You assume it's just mimicry. You assume it's just, oh, he said banana fart, I'll say banana fart too. Not necessarily the case. A lot of times I think the best peas in a pod scenes come from premise because, like you mentioned, there's already that math being done. There's already an implied idea there. If you're being organic, it's going to be a lot tougher. So you might have to work a little bit harder or wait. There's no reason why you can't wait to be peas in a pod, right? You can be like, wait, did you just, do all that? The dish is angry. Gosh, what are you angry about? Oh, you're angry about that? Well, you know what? Now I'm angry about it. I'm going to do my dishes angry too, or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's my hot improv take. I do love peas in a pods. I think we should do more of it, but I think you got to do it well. Otherwise, people are going to talk crap about it. A lot of people don't like peas in a pod.
Yeah, you were loaded up on that. I like that.
Yeah.
Man, hot improv take. That's a tough one for me. Okay. I'll say hot improv take. I think people
mean it.
Hot improv take. I think a lot of people talk about whether you're writerly or actorly in the style in which you do improv, and I don't think enough people talk about directorly.
Thank you.
I think that there is a lot to be said about understanding the flow of shows and like tension and just general storytelling. Like I think a scene that I did on Monday, I think went well. And part of it was because the scene before was wild with energy. And the next scene, we started very slow. And we were comfortable starting very slow. And it forces the audience to constantly be switching energies. And that allows you to be a step ahead of them. And sometimes the way to be a step ahead of them is to slow things down. And I think that's something that's like not often talked about is, are you looking for scenic variety? Are you like hitting a different type of joke than jokes that have been hit throughout the show? Are you looking for themes and patterns that reoccur? And I think that's like, people do talk about that, but I don't think there's enough emphasis on it. And I think tons of Clubhouse indie teams could benefit from thinking about that a little bit in their backline.
Applause. Hot improv take. Sean's right. That's something that I might have saved for a future topic even. But yeah, like and you know what is? It's because we're in LA. Everyone here is an actor or a writer. Not a lot of directors. I wish there would be more. I wish people would feel empowered. You don't need to like, be on like 20 film sets before you're ready to direct.
There's some great directors who come from an improv background. Jon Favreau did a lot of improv in Chicago. Like
Adam McKay,
Jordan Peele. I think, I think a lot of people that are drawn to improv want to either act or write. But come on, directors.
Yeah,
you could do that.
Yeah, come on, improvisers, stop acting and writing, start directing.
Yeah, go for it. Or don't let me do it all.
Or yeah, if you need a director. Great. Thank you so much for that hot improv take. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up now with an opportunity for you to plug what you got going on.
As David mentioned, I'm working on a short film. It's called Killer Views. I'm hoping to get that into some festivals later this year. I am on a UCB Harold team called Lohan. And then you can catch David and I on a team together called Glass Clown at and we have our own show called Be Our Guest. And then I'm also on another team, STEM Kids, that you can see around in book. Oh, and then I got a side little team that I love doing that please book me on. That is the Real Housewives.
And plug the social for Killer Views or any other socials.
Oh, you can follow Killer Views at what's their handle? Killer Views Film on Instagram. Lohan just created an Instagram. Lohan Improv. Glass Clown Improv at Glass Clown Improv, and at STEM Kids LA, I think.
That's kids with the Z.
Yeah, at STEM Kids LA. Yeah, kids like Kids Bop, baby.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, you can keep up with Sean there. Check him out on Harold Nights on Mondays at UCB Franklin.
Oh yeah, I guess you could follow me as an individual too.
Yeah, drop your social.
Yeah, at Sean 213 SEAN 213.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for being my first guest on Long Form Conversations.
It was a pleasure.
Premiere. And yeah,
I hope nerds who are listening enjoyed that.
Yeah, nerds, hope you enjoyed it,
because we're nerds.
yeah hope you enjoyed talking improv. And I guess if you want to get in contact with me, I'm probably not going to make a social for this. I'm probably not going to do anything additional to this. So.
You're gonna really promote it.
No, I'm going to promote it, but all of it's going to be filtered through at David D. Long, Luong. It's built into the name,
yeah,
right?
Okay,
so, yeah. At David D. Long for updates on me and this podcast.
There we go.
All right, great. Thanks so much. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Yep.
All right, great. Ooh, that was longer than I thought, man.
Yeah, we went
We went after it.
You can cut some shit out.